Hello and welcome to Trad Jazz Today. Dan Zeilinger has been a world-traveling trad jazz musician for the past 40 years. Some of his most memorable performances were on the lawn of the Edinburgh Castle, at the Imperial Palace in Japan, as well as TV shows and commercials around the world. Dan has met many people during his career and has spent many hours on and off stage with these musicians, talking about jazz, life, and more. Some are touring musicians, some are theme park warriors, and some are casual musicians who play on weekends with their friends. They all have stories worthy of a movie script, and through these interviews, Dan will be sharing them with you. Now, Dan Zeilinger.
Hi there, this is Dan Zeilinger with Trad Jazz Today. My next guest is somebody who, to be quite honest, I haven't met, but one of the things we talk about on this channel a lot is jazz and education. And the gentleman who I'm about to interview, that you're going to get to know the same as I am, actually is originally from Brazil, has all kinds of credits educationally, has been a touring musician. He actually has won a Latin Grammy on an album which he played both piano and clarinet for. I guess clarinet is the primary instrument. And here he is right now, Mr. Pedro Schneider. Did I say that correctly?
Yeah, absolutely.
For somebody with a last name that's a bit confusing, I take it seriously. You're trying to pronounce names correctly.
I appreciate
it. Hi, Pedro.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Dan.
Now, just to let you, the listeners know, Pedro was brought to attention by my son, Aaron, who all of you know, and because Pedro is his jazz and woodwind instructor at his high school, along with many other things. I guess you're currently at Cal State Long Beach?
Yeah.
Working on another credential. You came out of APU and all kinds of Brazil universities. We'll get to that, though.
Okay.
My first question is normally, so Pedro, where were you born?
Sorry, can you repeat it, please?
Where were you born?
Oh, I was born in Brazil, in a state called Rio Grande do Sul. It's in the very south, close to Uruguay, Argentina. In a city called Novo Hamburgo.
Okay. And I understand you started playing piano and taking voice lessons when you were very young. How old were you?
Yeah, so my grandma gave me a little keyboard as a Christmas gift when I was 4. And then I started to learn the demo songs by ear.
Very nice.
Yeah, and then my mother put me and my brother in the choir, so we started to sing very early, and then soon, like 1 year later, I would start having piano lessons.
Now, were your parents musical also?
They used to sing in choir as well. My dad had a vocal group. Yeah, but they were not actually musicians.
And my mother sang in the church when I was young, so I'm familiar with listening to choirs at a young age. It's very nice. So you received. I know that you have gone into music education. Tell me a little bit about the educational system in Brazil.
So it's not very structured, I would say. There's some beautiful social projects in slums, but not many, really. We have music in school, but it's a very basic instruction. It's not like for jazz or classical music. It's just a little bit of folk and try to sing together with the teacher playing some guitar, but it's not very serious. But when it comes to the university, then things get more serious. I mean, we have some conservatories in the great cities, and people can start to study music very seriously early in life, but it's not as structured as it is here in America.
So what was the first type of music that that caught your ear? Or better yet, when you were very young, when did you say, hey, that's something I might like to do in your head?
Mm-hmm. So I started to play the keyboard. I was a young kid and I didn't really know what I wanted. Uh, but I remember my dad and mom listening to many records at home. And I definitely like jazz, classical, and Brazilian popular music like Milton Nascimento or Gilberto Gil, João Gilberto, Tom Jobim, all of these uh, great composers in popular music. We have Bossa Nova and and Tropicalia, which is kind of the Brazilian rock,
Okay.
psychedelic rock. Yeah, many things, but my first piano lesson, and I have this very fresh in my memory. My teacher, her name is Elisa. She asked me to improvise. She just played in the low part of the piano register some accompaniment in the black keys. So she said, "Oh, you can use all the black keys and the A as a passing note, and then you can do whatever you want." So that was my first lesson, and I think it was very important.
Oh, that's a wonderful device. Giving
Yeah.
somebody safe notes to improvise on.
Yeah.
That helps you develop a melodic sense and give you some bravery as a young
Mm-hmm.
musician.
Yeah, I was very shy. I hesitate a little bit to give my first tries, but it felt really good. It felt really good.
Yeah, as you know, here in the U.S., one of the things that drives me crazy is because I'm an educator also. I don't know if Aaron has told you that, but is the fact that they almost write everybody out on a pentatonic scale when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
improvising, and that makes everybody sound the same, in my opinion, at times.
Mm-hmm.
Have you found that to be true?
Yeah, yeah, it's a very basic scale, and there's no many possibilities. So yeah, we play around the same moods, I guess. So yeah, I agree.
That I mean, it's a good one of the things. One of the things I like to do is, as I will do. Speaking of bossa novas, I've written something I call basic bossa, which just goes in between,
Mm,
say, a C major seven and a D minor seven. And so I said, okay,
okay.
you can improvise, use all of the right keys, and it'll be fine. And
Mm-hmm.
it gives them some bravery. So I understand the concept, you know.
Yeah, yeah, that's great.
So once you got into university, tell me about the jazz program there. Or what was the first college you went to?
I went to in Portuguese, Universidade Federal do Rio Grande do Sul. That would be translated as something like Federal University of my state, Rio Grande
Sure.
do Sul. Rio Grande do Sul in English would be the Great River of the South or something like that.
Hmm.
Uh, and unfortunately, we don't have a jazz program there. If you want to be a jazz musician in Brazil, or you have to go to Tatuí, which is a conservatory specialized in jazz, which is in São Paulo.
Okay.
Uh, but or you have to learn by yourself, listening to records and finding some method books and learning different scales other than just the major and minors. And yeah, it's a trying.
So does that mean that up until that point, you weren't playing anything but classical repertoire?
Mm, No, as I told you, in my very first lesson when I was 5, my teacher asked me to improvise.
Right.
So it was kind of a basic uh, pentatonic based modal music, and it was something driven to improvisation.
I
Uh,
understand. Um, but I
and
guess what I'm really asking is when was the first time you got to play an improvised format with other musicians, other than in a
okay,
in the
yeah,
teaching setting?
yeah. playing gigs and improvising in gigs only when I was like 21, 22, that I had a band, and I had many experiences with many sorts of musics before that. But when I was around 21, 22, we got to play jazz tunes with a band and improvising chorus.
Now, there's some wonderful Brazilian folk music which is improvised over and along with, what is that called again?
Well, I guess you're talking about Hermeto Pascoal.
Correct. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Hermeto Pascoal is one of the greatest improviser. I think he's the greatest improviser we have in Brazil, but we have many good musicians that can improvise nowadays. But he is definitely on the avant-garde of this movement, I would say.
Excellent. Excellent. What brought you, so did you, I'm sorry, I'm having problems organizing my thoughts at the moment.
Don't worry.
So did you go to São Paulo for a jazz education also?
No, I never had a jazz teacher other than Michel Dorfman, which is a great piano player. He's a jazz piano player, and I took some lessons with him. But it was like private lessons. I went to his house and had some lessons. He told me to learn some Tom Jobim, which is bossa nova, but it's kind of the Brazilian jazz. But he also asked me to learn some Bill Evans.
Not a bad combination. Of course, you know that Sergio Mendes, Brazil '66, made a huge impact on the U.S., and I was a huge fan. Of course, I'm just a tad bit older than you, so I was very young and impressionable when that band hit the United States. So I'm a huge fan of that style, and those voices in that band were just very seductive, if I guess I've no other way to put it, and which of course in turn made me a big fan of Jobim. So it's great stuff, you know.
Yeah. I consider, like, in music, Jobim is my father. I learned everything I know basically from him. Of course, there's many other composers and musicians that have had influenced me, but Tom Jobim is the greatest, I think. And there's also Moacir Santos, which is a great composer and musician who came to the U.S. in the 50s, 60s, and he did some jazz music with this Brazilian season. Maybe. Yeah, he is also a great influence to me.
Well, the thing I particularly have always enjoyed about whatever Brazilian music I have heard of until this point is the fact that it has such a relaxed feel. It doesn't seem hurried, and it doesn't seem intense. You know, it's, and I guess it's very much like the people.
That's true. Well, nowadays with this globalized world, we lost kind of this cultural, more a deeper sense of who we are, actually. But yeah, since Pixinguinha, Chiquinha Gonzaga, these musicians that were living while Louis Armstrong were doing his stuff here, and later with Cartola, with samba and choro, these main Brazilian genres. Yeah, there's so many musicians, including musicians that came to the U.S. Because we have here greatest market and better opportunities than there. For example, Ayrton Moreira, he lives here, and he played with Miles Davis and many others. He played with Sergio Mendes, I think.
Yes. Well, it's very telling that how much of what's considered jazz, American jazz, and of course our country always takes credit for the invention of jazz, but it was so heavily influenced by Latin voices from the very beginning. As you know, whether it be Jelly Roll Morton or any of the early jazz influences, very much a Latin influence on syncopated rhythms, on melodic lines. I mean, even a lot of people don't realize that on speaking away from jazz, John Philip Sousa, his bridge to a couple of his marches are actually Latin folk tunes, which I always find fascinating. I don't know if you were aware of that.
Yeah, yeah. We can hear in some Duke Ellington records some Latin influences.
Stan
Yeah,
Kenton,
definitely. Yeah, definitely.
you know, Stan Kenton's Cuban Fire album, although it's directly was influenced by the Cuban beat, it's
Hmm.
you know a clave is a clave. Speaking of Charlo, it's making inroads into the pop culture in the U.S. now.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm just now hearing artists playing that style. It's interesting for me that a lot of traditional music from other countries center around a beat, improvisation, trying to play something people will dance to. It's all very related.
Yeah.
You know, whether it be klezmer from Israel or Charo from Brazil or even Japanese taiko drumming has that triplet undertone swing to it.
Hmm.
Anyway, all of this makes me very excited to find out these things.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
You know. So tell me now about what brought you to the U.S.
So I finished my undergrad in clarinet performance, and then a friend of mine that was studying here, he told me that he could get a scholarship to me for studying with Michał Zgowski, which were the principal clarinet of for the Los Angeles Philharmonic during like 54 years, around 54 years. And then I came here to study with her at APU. I spent 2 years, and then I came to Long Beach to study with Helen, which was Michelle's student.
Okay.
So yeah, so they're great. They're great. I feel much better as a clarinet player today, because actually I was a pianist. I thought I would be a pianist, but playing these gigs, I wanted to add some wind instrument or wind or brass, and then I just posted on Facebook, "Hey, anyone have some trombone or saxophone or any wind instrument to to sell or something?" And then a bunch of friends of mine had a band, and they bought in a tour a clarinet, and none of them could play the clarinet, so they gave me, and I started to learn like 5 months before auditioning for undergrad. So it was kind of insane. So after my undergrad, I was still kind of rookie on the clarinet, and then I came here, and now I feel like now I can play the clarinet. I can do a clarinet sound, a beautiful clarinet sound, and control my instrument. So yeah,
That's
and
very
now
interesting. So relatively speaking, you haven't been playing clarinet nearly as long as you play piano.
no, I'm 34 now, so I'm playing piano for almost 30 years, and I'm playing clarinet for roughly 8 years.
Now you've learned saxophone also, and I know it's I know the fingerings appear to the general public to be the same, but they're not. There's something I understand. You also play double reeds and flute and all these other instruments.
Yeah, just a little bit. I'm actually a clarinet player, but I just learned with my colleagues, with musicians, how to play a little bit. I have wonderful friends who can really play double reeds. I studied bassoon for a while, but by that point, I was doing my undergrad in clarinet performance. So the director of the conservatory said that I would have to choose one, and then I chose the clarinet.
Now, have you been playing a jazz style on clarinet?
Not much, to be honest. Um, I'm really focused in orchestral music,
Oh, I understand.
and but I really love jazz. Uh, I wish I could improvise like Charlie Parker or this great improvisers or Eric Dolphy. Eric Dolphy is one of my favorites. But yeah, sometimes I try, I put some tune to try to play along, but that's not my main focus, and I don't spend many time practicing this actually.
I
But
understand. I'm sure as you get more comfortable with all the scales and modes and such on clarinet, that it'll come to you naturally because since you have such a good ear on keyboards and you starting so young. Uh,
yeah, every once in a while, people invite me to do some gigs with the clarinet, and I have to improvise eventually. So I do that, but I don't consider myself a great improviser with the clarinet.
okay. Oh no, I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying that I don't think that's going to be very far away for you to to be a great improviser on clarinet.
That that's very motivating.
No, I've heard some of the stuff that you have done that's online, and you're very talented. Uh, some of the bands that you've toured with and all.
Hmm.
Why don't we talk? You've got so what, seven recordings of your own, seven albums or so.
Yeah, so in 2010, I started to try to produce music. So it was in the era in the home studio era. So I use MIDI and all of these kinds of fake sounds to produce whole songs by myself. And I fall into this trap of making beats. So I did many beats from 2010 until today, and so my albums are kind of a rap influenced with jazz and soul, and it's also electronic because I do on the computer and with devices like drum machines and this kind of stuff.
I do the
But
same. I understand.
That's nice. That's nice. But I recorded with so many people with all sorts of music, and I think uh, that's very, how can I say? I'm glad. I feel very grateful, and I feel a deep joy that I can know so many musicians and record with them so many different styles. And I don't do only classical music, although it demands a lot of effort to get things very refined to eventually get into a great orchestra. For example, here in the US, you have San Francisco, you have Los Angeles Phil, and then Chicago Symphony, New York Symphony, Cleveland, Philadelphia,
Sure.
many great orchestras in the US, and it's really hard to get into them. So we had to practice really hard.
Well, that's what I tell to my tuba students. I tell my tuba students that, especially for tuba players, there's only one in the symphony. So if you want to make money and play music, you need to learn your jazz because you can always as a tuba player, you can always get a Dixieland gig somewhere to pay the bills while you're working towards, getting your symphony chair.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's the truth behind a lot of classical musicians in general. A lot of my friends that have pursued that route end up getting a chair in a foreign symphony, going to do the Hong Kong Symphony, or going to New Delhi, or taking a chair at another symphony while they're working towards a U.S. job.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But so I'm not going to hear you playing with Von Weber clarinet concerto anytime soon or maybe the Mozart. What do you think?
Well, I practice the Mozart concerto very often indeed. This is the great standard of our repertoire.
Yes.
And we have to have it refined at all times. So yeah, I played the Weber concertino, the concerto number 1 and 2, but Mozart is the one I spend most time with.
So I have to ask, are you playing on a Sommer or a buffet?
Oh, I play buffet. I have an R13, which is the same instrument, I guess, that Benny Goodman used to play. And
Yes,
Artie
yeah.
Shaw, Benny Goodman, Artie Shaw.
But it's also considered, those two brands are considered the hallmarks for classical clarinetists, I understand.
Yeah.
And I don't suppose you've even taken a look at an Albert system yet.
No. Michelle played in a German system, and she told me she changed from the French to the German system because at that time, I think it was in the 60s, it was better for her to get a deeper, bigger, darker the sound she wanted to have. But nowadays, with this bunch of high technologically developed mouthpieces and reeds, we can have a good sound with some effort, but we can have a good sound in a French system.
Yeah, a lot of the New Orleans style players, the only reason I know about that is because a lot of the New Orleans style players like to play the Albert system. Although I'm told, I'm not a clarinet player, but I'm told that fingerings are very awkward, very spread out. But they say they think differently when they improvise on an Albert as opposed to a Bain. So I find all that interesting. As a tuba player, of course, I started out as a trumpet player, but I'm also a teacher, so you have to learn a little bit about everybody,
Yeah, indeed. Well, talking about Dixieland, one of my favorites are Sidney Bechet for sure. I love his playing, and I read some articles about Louis Armstrong imitating some clarinet players because they play those obligatos with running eighth notes up and down. So that's why he was one of the first people, I think, to develop the language of the trumpet because he was playing clarinet lines. So it was pretty interesting.
I actually haven't heard that, and I consider myself a jazz educator, so that's very interesting to me as well. You've just made everybody listening to the show very happy by giving respect to Louis and Sidney Bechet. It just makes me smile because one thing I was telling my son before I interviewed you is, Jay, I sure hope he likes traditional jazz. Anyway. How can you play jazz and not like Louis Armstrong,
Yeah, he's the king.
Now, who were your piano influences? Are you an Oscar Peterson fan? Did you listen to Art Tatum?
Sure. Yeah, all of these guys. I like many. It's hard to say a few, but definitely my main influence is Tom Jobim. He's not a very virtuosic player, but he chooses.
His harmonic sensibilities are amazing.
Yeah, his choices are taken very carefully, and I like that. I like this care, this love of choosing the ah, I wouldn't say the right notes, but to build his style over the notes he think are best for his ear.
Yeah,
So yeah,
his chord changes never seem abrupt. They naturally flow, and that takes thought.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's everything so well waved. And but talking about American pianists, I have a bunch. Duke Ellington is one of my favorites. Bill Evans for sure. Oscar Peterson, of course. Art Tatum. Art Tatum was like what? Like great composers like Stravinsky, Poulenc, all of these Rachmaninoff, all of these composers were in New York, going to Art Tatum shows to learn from him. So there's no words.
You must be a huge Debussy fan also.
Yeah, of course.
I
He's
mean,
one.
that's kind of ties in with his Jobim sensibility,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Jobim borrowed some stuff from Debussy. Um, Sometimes I catch some borrowings like Tchaikovsky six, Debussy many stuff. The Afternoon of a Faun or Chopin.
Yeah.
He borrowed some stuff from them. But yeah, Oscar Peterson is very impressive. Yeah,
Well,
his control of the keyboard, like of different styles, he can change from one style to another, and I wonder if he ever played a wrong note
well,
because
I had a chance to attend a Clark Terry clinic when I was young, and he said something that completely blew my mind. And he said, there are no wrong notes. It's how you get in and out of them.
yeah, and I think the most important player in that sense is definitely Thelonious Monk.
Okay.
His style is very modern. I think he's very impressive as well.
Well, the thing with Monk is he kept trying to imply quarter tones and eighth tones, and I don't think a lot of people, laymen, understood what he was trying to do with his dissonance.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
what can you say? It was obscene when Louis Armstrong used a major seven on Strutting Into Barbecue. Everybody thought that was blasphemous. So harmonic choices, I think, had errors on whether or not they're acceptable.
Yeah. What's the name of that guy, the Take Five guy?
Oh, Dave Brubeck.
Dave Brubeck. This one I love Dave Brubeck. Uh,
Of
I
course, once
love
again, his Rondo a la Turk
yeah,
is was considered to be really avant-garde for its time, along with Take Five, of course.
yeah, yeah. Maybe because of the meter. I don't know.
Correct. Yeah.
But yeah, Keith Jarrett. I can not mention Keith Jarrett. He's one of my favorites as well.
As long as I don't have to watch him, I'm okay. I like listening to him, but I just find his movement awkward. So, but that's
Yeah,
me.
he's
I'm an
really
old guy.
he is really awkward. He's really awkward indeed. He sings very awkwardly while playing. Um, but yeah, he's very impressive. A great musician, a very energetic. He delivers the performance. Uh, Errol Garner. I love
Oh
Errol Garner.
yes.
So this kind of he's very old school. If you consider that people like Bill Evans was trying something really new, I guess, in terms of aesthetic. But yeah, Errol Garner was kind of a
He's
old
kind of in
school
that same
guy.
school as long with oh, I'm going to lose his name now. Uh, the guy who always played the really high octaves. Um, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
the Dizzy Gillespie.
No, I was talking about a pianist.
Oh,
Um, and it's gone. You know,
okay.
once you get over 60, it happens to you all the times.
What kind of style? Let's investigate.
Um, that, kind of that 1940s, 1950s solo piano. George Shearing. There we go.
I don't know him. Oh, that's a shame.
Well, that's okay. There's so many piano players out there. You
Yeah.
know,
Hmm.
so that's really wonderful. Now, as an educator, I hope that you talk to your students about the earlier forms of jazz. You know, every so often I'll get a private student and I'll say, "Do you ever listen to old jazz?" And he'll say, "Oh, you mean Miles?" And I sort of stop and I go, "No, you know, I'm talking about Louis Armstrong."
Hmm.
Now, do you start your students from the earlier styles?
Well,
At least listening.
a little explanation before that. Uh, while I was in my undergrad, I got really into history of music history. So I think it's super important to have this awareness of the not evolution, but the process of transformation of music, and where this idea comes from and where this other idea comes from. So I find it really, really, really important. And even I go further than Louis Armstrong.
Sure.
I go to Scott Joplin. Definitely. People must know why Miles Davis did exist like he existed because of Charlie Parker and then because of Duke Ellington. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
That's
sorry.
okay.
Because of Charlie Parker and Duke Ellington, because of Count Basie and Louis Armstrong for sure.
Of course, if you want to take it to the next step, Mozart improvised.
Yeah.
You know, many of the classical composers, in fact, were doing lead line and figured bass and telling the rest of the orchestra to just fill in what you feel. So improvisation within a format has been around for a very long time.
Yeah, definitely. It's unfortunate that the classical music environment lost this kind of lost. There's some, especially pianists, that are good improviser, but overall we lost this sense of improvising because we are trained uh, so much to refine one particular phrase, get this dynamic right, and the articulation. So we spend so much time training these aspects that sometimes we just don't let it go. And
I think some of that is because we tend to compartmentalize
mhm,
styles.
mhm,
You know, one of the subjects that comes up often on this show is the fact that descriptions are normally the product of academics. If you talk to a great musician, they don't talk about style. They'll flow easily from one into another. That's why you hear people improvising over Beethoven, or you hear jazz players quoting Debussy, for example, which is something Bix Beiderbecke used to do a lot.
mhm.
So they don't talk about divisions in style. They just try to incorporate what they hear for the moment. So
Yeah, 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 sure. On the 19th century, these composers, all of these, Chopin, Liszt, Beethoven, Brahms, all of these knew how to improvise and were great improvisers. They were actually very show-off musicians. And
especially Liszt, but we don't need to talk about that. No.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And in the 20th century, I guess that the avant-garde uh, it was mandatory to be ultra cerebral and very rational and have control over every little aspect of the music. So yeah, the music lost one spark there, I think.
You know, it's interesting, Pedro, is every generation, the youth tries to reject the previous generation. But they don't understand that by doing that, they're imitating the previous generation.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I always told my students and my friends in conversations that if you want to deconstruct something, you have to know how to build first, and then you can decide what do you want to deconstruct, other than just trying something crazy out of nothing.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think we agree on way too much. But well, I'm so glad that my son's jazz program is in your hands. Um, it's a pleasure to get to know you, and anytime I've had several educators on this show, you should take a look. I've done over 70 interviews now
I will.
with musicians. There's one in particular I think you would enjoy, a guy named Tomas Istas, who's Hungarian. And he is actually the violin instructor at Kecskemét University in Hungary. But
Wow.
he also has a ragtime band, and a band that does jazz, American jazz. And we talk about the joining of the two things.
Yeah.
I think you would really enjoy that.
Yeah, thanks for the tip. I will dig into your channel, definitely.
Wonderful. Well, listen, I'm gonna wrap things up here. Do you have anything you'd like to plug? Is there a place where people can get your music, or see your videos, or get instruction?
Well, I have a YouTube channel that you guys can check. It's Pedro Dom and Orquestra Livre in Portuguese, so it's kind of tricky. I can send you the link, or you can.
Well, I think if they just type in Pedro Dom, a whole series of things will come up.
Yeah.
The rest of it, the spelling is get kind of funky for Americans, English speakers.
Yeah. And maybe if you put Pedro Dom Orchestra, maybe you can find something,
Yeah.
because it's the name of my band. In Brazil, it's Free Orchestra. It's an orchestra free to do whatever they want. And we did lots of improvisations. Our shows were like 10 tunes and many hours of improvisation. So it was really transcendental. It was great. It's a different feeling when you prepare one piece. Like when I played Mozart Concerto with orchestra, for example, I knew exactly everything I wanted to do. But when you try to just express what's in your feelings in the moment, it's a completely different,
Aesthetic, yes.
Yeah.
And within the classical context, that's kind of the role that the arpeggio is supposed to play. What am I trying? Where they have a stop in the music, and then the soloist can improvise freely.
Oh, the cadenza.
A cadenza. I'm sorry, I just couldn't remember the term.
Yeah.
But they only get to do it for that much time.
Yeah. But
Really wonderful. And so a Pedro Dom Orquestra. By the way, I used to play trumpet in a Cuban band called Orquestra Caribe. So I understand the spelling being a little bit odd.
cool. Yeah, the orchestra, you change the C and the H for Q and U. If you
Excellent.
want to try. And then I use Instagram if you guys want to follow me, or just check my Instagram. Yeah. It's Pedro Freedom on my Instagram. So
Okay.
if you guys like to take a look.
Excellent.
Yeah,
And say somebody might be interested in taking lessons from you. Can they reach you through you have a page?
As an educator, no. I'm really focused on performance, and I'm learning how to teach very much right now. I never thought I could be a teacher, but I guess it's been working because the students have been improving so much. I'm really patient, and I go for the basics first.
Sure.
I think that a good tone, for example, is a must. you don't want to go to your scales and arpeggios before having a great tone, you know. So and yeah, I talk about harmony. Sometimes the younger students are a little scared. I ask them to sing, not just play, because I think that it's really important because we're singing through our instruments. So I ask them to sing, and I talk about harmony and history because I think it's really important too.
Well, being able to hear the pitch, especially on a wind instrument,
Hmm.
before you play it is very, very, very important.
Yeah.
And which comes into the singing part of things. And not only that, you then learn breath control and all of the other things that you need to find through singing. So students, it's important that you learn how to sing,
Yes, it is.
you know. Well, thank you very much, Pedro, for this interview. I appreciate your time.
My pleasure, Mr.
And I
G.
will drop you a note to let you know when this airs.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, you take care now.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Trad Jazz Today. Dan posts new interviews every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Make sure to check out the archive of past shows, and please give us a thumbs up when you subscribe to the channel. Bye.